Hey guys, this is Reinhardt, and everybody keep asking me what I think about PlayForge War, the new game that is coming out at the end of this year, the game that's been balancing by a top World of Warcraft players and a couple other gamers as well. And I got very curious, so I went to the website and I created my profile, I registered for beta, and I asked, hey guys, I would like to promote this game and I would like to have an interview with anybody. Well, guess what? I actually got an answer from the lead designer, Timothy Alvis, of the game, and I have him on the Skype with me right now, and we're gonna have a full-fledged interview. So let's jump to it right away. Okay, Tim. The first question I have is, how long you guys been designing the game for?
The game design has actually been floating around for a couple of years. We officially started production on the game at the end of 2011, right at the very end of 2011. So it hasn't been in production all that long.
Wow. The game actually looks really good. The graphics looks really fun, and the mechanics, from what I've seen, is pretty awesome. My main question is, what kind of platform is the game going to be?
As far as what platforms will it release? Release them. We're going to be releasing on PC. Initially, we're looking at Steam as a distribution partner, but until we go through the official process of Steam approval and all of that, we can't promise anything 100%. The Unreal 3 engine, which is what we are building it on top of, does have a working OS X version, but we are not going to spend a lot of time right now making sure that works. Our first and most important goal is to get it running on Steam on the PC, but we are absolutely looking to make sure that it runs on OS X as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, I actually do have Macintosh laptop.
Yep, same here. I've got, in my home, I have about half Mac, half PC.
Oh, wow. Now, in terms of the game, is it going to be MMO, FPS? Is it going to be like mobile? I hear all these people saying like completely different things all the time.
Yeah, we see a lot of comparisons to everything from Fury to Bloodline Champions to Smite. The game is the reason I think a lot of people associate it with an MMO is that the abilities that the classes use are very MMO flavored. You have things with cast times, you have interrupts, you have stuns, you have damage over time, you have direct damage. They're very much structured the way that a MMO PvP combat system would be structured. The way that you interact with the world, however, is third person. So third person's over the head, not over the shoulder. Over the shoulder can provide some problems with line of sight between your character and your camera. So we're actually keeping the camera just a little bit above the person's head, your crosshair, a little bit above the character's head. But it is all third person. You move around in the world the same way you would with an FPS as well. You don't click. You can't see necessarily behind you very much, maybe about 2 or 3 feet behind you. Your camera isn't free floating, so you can't, for instance, be running in one direction and spin your camera to watch behind you as you do that, which makes a lot of positioning and situational awareness very different than what it is in a typical MMO. We're not really MOBA in any meaningful way. MOBAs tend to have a progression as you're playing an individual match, and they have AI that sort of swarms at you and you level up off of them. We don't have any of that. It's straight up everything everything you're playing against as a player.
Wow. Is there going to be any player versus environment situations?
No, we never want to introduce anything that's PvE based. It doesn't mean that we won't have modes that kind of remind people of something they may have experienced in PvE. We haven't really talked very many details about Labyrinth, but as a gameplay mode that we will be coming out with planned for 2013, that will remind people a little bit of what it felt like to run a dungeon in an MMO. Wow. But the entire experience is PvP, so there are no AI controlling anything. It's all player versus player.
Is there going to be any leveling?
We do have leveling, but unlike most games, not all, but unlike most, our levels aren't power increases. So you open up new options, new aesthetic options, you can replace one of your 9 abilities with a new ability. Some of the gear will allow you to reallocate more stats, but it won't have more stats. So you're never going to run into something where you have a sword, for instance, that has 500 DPS and another sword that has 150, and your character doesn't gain 5 agility per level or gain access to a new ability that hits twice as hard as an older one. And we make sure that starting at level 1, we give you a full tool set. So you have interrupts, you have stuns, you have everything you need to PvP at a tournament level. Really, if you're kind of in that mindset, you have it from level 1 on.
Okay, now you actually jumped to the next question I had. The tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
How often you guys are planning to do it? Are you guys going to be planning to be a part of MLG tournaments?
Well, I think for us, we are trying to approach it a little bit differently than, say, a game like Bloodline Champions may have. Our goal isn't to immediately jump into esports right off the bat. I think to properly support an esports community, you need to have a very large player base that enjoys the game without it being an esport. I think it needs to be something that's fun for 5 guys that have never played an MMO to be able to jump into and have a lot of fun with. If you don't have that esports community becomes the entire community, and frankly, there just aren't enough people at that skill level to sustain a vibrant game. So for us, at launch, we won't have any official ranking associated with players at all. Our goal with our very initial launch product is just to get people introduced to the game.
Okay, make it as fun as possible.
Make it as fun as possible, yeah. I mean, we're absolutely going to be bringing in, ranked match play and official tournaments and that sort of thing, but I doubt it's something you'll see in 2012.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's actually pretty realistically. Now, the question about... Wow. Sorry.
It's okay.
The question about the gear, the progression.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing, so to say, overview of Guild Wars, people always like, "Oh my God, you can have the same gear even if you're a tournament winner than everybody else in terms of stats." Now I understand you guys gonna have similar platform where the gear advantage is not gonna be existent in PvP, but are there gonna be any like aesthetics for people or any gear customizations they can possibly do for their characters?
Yeah, in fact, we're also going to produce custom VFX for the most highly ranked players. So while it's not like we're going to skimp back on the visual effects, say for the Pyromancer, for every player, someone who is the highest ranked, they'll have just a little more oomph, a little more flash whenever you see them pop on the screen. So both from the armor and from the ability perspective, people at a high rank will be visually distinctive from those who have not participated in that level of play.
Oh wow, talking about the high ranked, I believe I heard that the Talbadar, Snods, Rekful are also working with your game design team to provide to give you feedback about the game balancing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we felt was important right from the start was to not make the mistake of believing that all of the minds that we had inside the company were the best minds and the perfect minds to design every single aspect of every ability. We knew that once this got into the players' hands, that people better than us, because I haven't won any national tournaments or any worldwide tournaments. We knew that people better than us would stretch the system to its limits much more quickly and effectively than we could. So right from the beginning, even before we had a playtest version of the game, we brought them into theorycraft on the abilities to make sure that things felt right before we even implemented the first version. So unlike a situation where you launch a game and find that it's wildly unbalanced from the get-go and then you have to try to bring it in before your community collapses, we're going to launch our playtesting sessions even have fairly balanced abilities from the get-go, and it just gets better with each iteration. So yeah, Rekful, Snuts, Talbadar, Venruki, Soda, those guys have been extremely helpful thus far.
Yeah, quite honestly, on the side note, you have no idea how it makes me happy to hear that. I played Rift, Star Wars, and World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, I wasn't a tournament winner, but I did get to a gladiator a couple times, and which is like top 0.5% of the all PvPers out there. And basically, the thing that kind of, I guess, got me mad a little bit is to have all the top-rated players making suggestions for Blizzard, and they're crickets. Literally, they're just like a bunch of crickets just cricketing. Then I see Rift players making suggestions for Rift game, and Rift actually taking their feedback. And by playing Star Wars, I actually found out there's a lot of, like, the reason why I quit Star Wars in a heartbeat within 2 weeks is just the class imbalancing right off the start. And my perception was like, why should I be paying for a half-baked MMO that just released with all this imbalancing and give it more time when I can play a little bit better version of that MMO over here, which is World of Warcraft.
Yeah, and as someone who plays and enjoys those games quite a bit myself, one of the things that's most disappointing is to see the ability bloat continue because, if you have 3 levers and you need to get them in balance, that's not so difficult. If you have 900 levers that you have to get into perfect balance, you start running into some really complicated problems, the kind of thing that even the brightest guys sitting around trying to theory craft aren't going to be able to get their hands around very much. And for instance, I was playing a Marauder in Star Wars The Old Republic. The Marauder, at one point I had I think 42 keybinds that I had to play with, and the ability set just continued to bloat from there. I ended up having to try to macro some of the proc-based abilities in together just to keep control of that. So when you think of it, if it's that difficult just to play with the character, balancing a set of 10, 12, 30 of those with 30, 40 abilities active at once, yeah, just a nightmare. So not only is it important to bring in the community, I think it's just as important for companies to start looking at the reality that more isn't necessarily better.
Actually, absolutely right. I use 72 keybinds in World of Warcraft.
Wow.
And
yeah.
it's still not enough.
No, you need macros. I mean,
all of those have macros too.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's too much.
It is kind of gets to the point where it gets a bit too much or overwhelming. The biggest thing though, it's the lag issue, latency also in the most of the MMOs. And this is the next question I want to see. You said there's a lot of cast times, and in World of Warcraft, I play a Warlock class, and it kind of makes me want to punch a teddy bear or something. When I'm getting my cast off, the target is feared. Yeah, the one who I try to fear, he also casted interrupt, and even though my spell get off earlier, I still got the interrupt, and I still sitting there and not doing anything because of the latency issues. How much are you guys gonna be friendly in terms of latency?
Well, one of the things that helps with us is that, especially at launch, which is I think probably the most important period, because that's when a company, especially an indie studio, has the least amount of resources to pour into infrastructure, right? So if a company like Blizzard has a difficult time with it, how is an indie going to pull it off? Well, I think it's one of the things that I wouldn't say was intentional, but was one of those happy outcomes of where we are as a company in development, is that you're going to be able to host these servers pretty much anywhere that hosts game servers. So companies like Art of War Central, GameServers.com, that sort of thing. Being able to do that means that your experience playing isn't needing to be shared. If 50,000 people, hop on to play Forge that day, those 50,000 people aren't sharing resources with you. More than likely, it's distributed across, several thousand different machines, and certainly 6 to a dozen different data centers just in the US alone. It also lets us do things for people that are not in the North American region that a traditional MMO just can't, because they would have to put up the entire infrastructure for their entire setup. Overseas, it becomes really cost prohibitive, whereas with this, a dedicated server, we work out an arrangement with somebody, say in Australia or Brazil or any one of the nations in Europe or Russia or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. We work out an arrangement where they have our dedicated server files on hand, and if someone wants to host a server, they sign up, pay a small fee to the server company, and they have their own completely under their control version of Forge. So they're able to host the map cycle that they like, they're able to set the number of players per match that they want, the length of the match, all sorts of things. Very, very similar to what you would be able to do with a first-person shooter.
Timothy, you have no idea how many Australians you just made happy with that.
I can imagine. One of our development partners actually is from New Zealand, so we certainly have an internal voice for that region of the world as well.
Yeah, the poor guys, they're trying to make videos and stuff with the 300 ms, and they keep complaining and asking for a separate server.
Yeah, and things like downtime, because when you have this monolithic system, you've got downtime that spreads across the entire network. Where with a dedicated server setup, as we're launching with, certainly you're able to, if you want to upgrade to the latest version, that's fine. Do it whenever it's convenient for your region. I mean, it's not going to be everybody going down at 2 o'clock in the morning in the U.S., which happens to be prime time in Australia.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of the game, more of a game specifics, I understand you guys have already a list of classes like Warden, Pyromancer, Shaman, Assassin. Are you guys going to have any more classes?
Yeah, absolutely. We already have a sixth one essentially in production that we aren't announcing yet. That class will be part of a soon after launch, but not day one launch, DLC or patch. We're not exactly sure which of the two is the most efficient method to deliver it to everybody, but whichever of the two it is, it'll be something that they get free either way. So there's definitely a sixth class coming. Above that sixth, we have 6 others designed well enough that we know what role they would fill. We feel comfortable that it's different enough from other roles that exist to be worth putting into the game. What we won't do is go like the MOBA route and have 30 classes. Once you start getting into something like 30, you have a really difficult time differentiating between the purpose of 2 different classes. And the problem there is you start getting into poaching. So if you have a great ability idea for a light defense melee character, and you have 4 of those, 3 of them don't get benefit from it. So it's really important for us to have a class count that only lines up with the purpose count, so that we don't run into that issue.
Wow, that actually sounds really good, because in League of Legends right now, it's probably one of the games that has the most amount of champions out there available. And when they're coming up with a new class or the new champion, everybody's like, yeah, you know what, this is just an upgraded version of the previous champion you just already shown us, and it's more viable in ranked arenas. I know a lot of people are complaining about that there's a huge homogenization when it comes to further.
Yeah, instead of these nice stark color differences, when you think of them, if they were like a color palette, instead of these stark differences between each one, you start getting this really broad gradient, and it kind of muddies down that feeling of you're choosing to play a this or a that. And we really want to keep people, like, one of the things we like is, like, for instance, Rekful, definitely one of the top rogues that play, and so he's got an identity with a class, and that class has its own purpose, and we want to kind of keep that. So we want people to feel like I am a great Pathfinder, or I am a great Pyro, or a great Shaman, and we don't want it to be like, well, I'm a great kiting, and then you have 3 kiting classes, and yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. A little bit of a fanboy question: do you have any DKs or Warlocks in development?
We do not have anything like a DK or Warlock in the class plans right now.
Gotcha.
We have classes in mind that have flavor, I want to say, of something like a Necromancer or a Warlock, but certainly nothing like a DK right now.
Okay, gotcha. Alright, well, at least we have Necromancer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the question is about the in-game accessories. I heard a lot of people saying, like, well, how can these guys come up with more content and everything when their game is actually so affordable, so to say? Now, is there going to be anything that people maybe buy in the game using the real-life money?
So we haven't worked out with a partner yet, like Steam, on what the price will be, but it is going to be indie priced. So for sure then, that's somewhere not too far off what the range will be. What we do plan on releasing is content that has absolutely no effect on player power, but does have an effect on aesthetics. Just that sort of thing. So, for instance, and don't hold me firmly to these particular options, because we may decide that some of them are free or whatever. But right now, you choose a class and your gender is selected for you. It may be that to unlock the other gender for that class, which is entirely a flavor thing, it doesn't change your stats in any way, that may be something that is a very minor charge, but is a charge. There are definitely going to be skins that will be purchased, that you'll be able to purchase, that will change the look of your class, both for you and for your companion. There'll be There will be content that we'll release that will act as mini expansion packs. So we have 5 factions planned. Right now we've only went live information-wise with the Vaklandir faction, but we do have 5 factions planned. Factions for us, though, they can't really think of them as like Horde versus Alliance, to where you can only be one or the other when you're playing. It's a visual choice. It's a flavor choice. So your factions will determine kind of what maps you think of as your home map, as we'll be releasing maps that line up with the faction as well. But you're going to be able to have, if you have 5 players on a team in 5 factions, you could have 1 player from each faction fighting on the same side.
Oh, wow. That's actually awesome. Now, quick question. Can the people from the same factions kill each other?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of, if you join a game, whoever's on the other team or teams, those are the guys you kill, no matter what faction they call their own.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, you mentioned the companions. What exactly is the companion system?
We can't release all the details, as we are looking to do sort of a much more in-depth preview of that later. What I can say is there's a lot of speculation that they're just kind of like the hunter pet, or some other companion that maybe like Star Wars: The Old Republic, where he's always kind of walking around chatting at you or doing whatever. It's nothing like that. It would be much easier to think of them in terms of, say, a game like if you ever played the handheld game Golden Sun or any of the Final Fantasy series. So companions are not an ever-present thing. They appear with a purpose.
They appear with a purpose. Gotcha. Alrighty, well, actually very excited about the companions too. And from what I read is you guys gonna have some sort of advanced AI system for the companions?
We are, but actually that's for a different gameplay mode. So the default gameplay modes that we're launching with, we won't be making use of that. We don't like the idea of, like, one of the things I always hated, and to reference WoW again, I would be out as a rogue, and say on Warsong Gulch, guys would drop off of the ledge, start running towards the base. I would pop out, catch the straggler, the guy who was semi-AFK or whatever, start fighting. But if he was a hunter in Beastmaster spec, he would just go run around that little house that's right there, while his pet tried to chew me down. So I spent all of my time trying to reverse kite this pet to finally get the hunter in range. That's annoying because I'm fighting with AI that's doing all kinds of silly shit rather than actually fighting a player. So our gameplay modes we're launching with will not have the companions interacting with you that way. We are going to launch a gameplay mode for people that are really a big fan of that, but it's going to be specific to the pets behaving that way.
Okay. Now, how many abilities will each class have, approximately?
We're looking at limiting it right now to less than 30. 30 is a really high, it may be 20 is actually a better number, but it's just like with the class selection. We don't think that it's meaningful to start overlapping ability purpose either. So having 30 abilities is great if you have 30 unique things to choose from. If you have 30 and 10 of them are kind of just like this, but maybe a little bit more finely tuned, that starts to get into the realm of being a dull choice.
Gotcha.
So somewhere between 20 and 30 per class.
And they're gonna have only 10 slots. 10 skill slots?
Only 9 slots.
Only 9 slots. Now, is it gonna be like Guild Wars, where they're gonna have a healing slot, dedicated utility, dedicated ultimate slot, and then a weapon, so like damaging skills?
It'll be a lot like Guild Wars in that we are going to designate ability categories, and you'll have a limit to how many from each category you can bring with you.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, the last thing we wanted to see was someone walk in with 9 epic type abilities and nothing else. So he's barely doing any damage, but he's annoying everyone.
Yeah, that's actually very, very good. Okay, and the last question is, when can we take your game for a test drive?
We can't announce when the beta is going to go live. For a few reasons. Some of them are development, just to make sure that we have everything in order on our side. Some of them have to do with partners. Setting up a beta for a game that doesn't have a monolithic server architecture, like where you log in and only play on our servers, means that we need to work with a partner closely to make sure the beta goes off without a hitch. So I can't really announce an exact time, but it's not going to be late fall. I mean, we're not talking Halloween. We're talking before Halloween.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now the question is, do you guys have a YouTube channel people can maybe go check out, subscribe to, and we'll get an
We do.
announcement?
Yeah,
Awesome.
we do actually. We only have the teaser up there right now, which we're definitely not calling it a trailer, as we intentionally show no gameplay footage right now. It's just meant to sort of introduce you to the feel of the artwork. It's pre-alpha levels, pre-alpha classes, but you get an idea of what the levels and characters sort of feel like.
The quick question: How is it going to be structured? 5v5, 3v3, 2v2?
The structure is actually going to, for official modes, we're not going to support anything smaller than 5v5. The reasoning there is balance becomes, you really have to change the classes pretty significantly to make 3v3 balanced. You end up with a lot of homogenization, and if one thing has definitely suffered in World of Warcraft's PvP over the last few it's been that the classes have become much more similar than they were, which again kind of reduces that feeling of having an individual flavor.
Oh yeah.
So when you get down to 3v3, you start getting into like, somebody needs a self-heal and everybody needs to have this same set of tools. So our goal is to look at things at a 5v5 basis, with 5 individual players, making sure that there's balance between the class compositions there.
That would actually make a lot of sense. Let's take a look at WoW. Every melee has a interrupt. They gave it to every single melee. They gave dispel to every single healer.
Yeah, they have like replenishment all over the place. I mean, it's caused by the size of their content. I mean, the 5-man dungeons, the 3-man arenas, especially on the PvP side.
Yeah.
And for us too, it's not as difficult to find people to play with, because if you have just 2 friends that you really enjoy playing alongside, one of our ranking systems in particular is going to rank you whether you're playing just with those 3 or with 3 people as part of a group of 16. So we'll rank you statistically as a group of 3. So if you want to log into a server that has 10 other people playing and now you got 13 on 13, you 3 run around as a unit and do things and be very, very effective, and you'll be ranked accordingly.
Is there a healer class in the game?
That's something that I have heard has been speculated and rumored and maybe even discussed in other places, but it's not something I can confirm.
Gotcha. Yeah. In World of Warcraft, by the way, about the class homogenization, it's awesome. They give everybody a melee all the melee. They gave melee interrupt. They gave all the healers defensive dispel. In Mists of Pandaria, defensive dispels goes on an 8-second cooldown. Melee interrupts are all nerfed to 15 seconds because they realized that they gave it too much to too many classes.
Yeah.
It's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back type of situation.
Yeah, and it really starts to eat into that feeling of of your class being good at something. I mean, now your class is just you're either good with it or not, rather than this is good at doing X or Y or Z. And we just don't want to fall into that trap by focusing on too small of a competition size. It doesn't mean that we won't build some maps for people to enjoy for 3v3, but it would take some pretty drastic circumstances for us to start to balance around a 3v3 scenario.
Okay, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Quite honestly, the game looks pretty awesome. Actually, this is the question I had. Question: do you guys gonna have some sort of like a dodge mechanic that in Guild Wars or Bloodline Champions?
Yeah, we have it's essentially a whatever your class's version of roll to the side is. You have a left and right dodger roll. You also have a block that's on a short cooldown that allows you to block any incoming attack, whether ranged, magical, or whatever it might be. But by using either one of those, you eat up a global cooldown as if you were using an ability. So you're making a choice between avoidance and an output.
Okay, that's awesome. And whoever can avoid whichever big cooldowns the other enemies popping and stuff will actually come up victorious.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to make it so that there are no stats controlling what happens. There's no RNG controlling what happens. You're just deciding between Do I dodge right now? Is it better if I blocked? If I just use my block, do I need to dodge, or am I going to be too far out of position if I do that? I mean, we thought it was important to make dodge sort of an unavoidable position change. So you have like a fixed trajectory and distance that you travel. So that way you're deciding between giving up where you are with body collision being a factor. Giving up where you are could mean you might not get back. So things like dodge, yeah, they're a decision that you make moment to moment.
Okay, and quick question about RNG. Are there going to be any crits in the game?
No, we have no critical hits.
That's great. That actually makes me very, very happy.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to recognize the situation around you and increase your damage above the base, but none of them have to do with a dice roll. It's all about you notice XYZ is happening and so you react.
Yeah. You have no idea how it actually makes me happy. There's so many times in Arena I would have lost if I didn't have like, some crazy RNG, or I would have won if my enemy would not have like crit me for like 30-50% of my HP with one ability.
Yeah. Not to mention, if you start introducing crits, you start having to balance health pools around crits, and it just, we really believe the game is better off without them.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. Timothy, thanks a lot for your time. Is there anything else?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yep, I'm very, very excited actually trying out the game in beta and actually playing it with my bunch of my friends. A lot of my friends, they kept poking about the PlayForge game, and it was quite honestly, because you are the only game where you have top players actually have a feedback on the class design, on the class balance.
Yeah, we've actually, speaking of that, we've recently brought in a few of the equivalent to Wreckful and Snuts and those guys on the Guild Wars side. So we have some of the national tournament and international tournament players actually taking a look at things with us there as well. It's really important to us, I think, to take in that feedback, because once you play at that level, I think it exposes a lot more of the game mechanics than we would be able to expose internally on our own. So I'm glad people are receptive to that. It was definitely something we debated internally, but at the end of the day, we felt like it was a good call.
Tim, I'm sorry, I'm gonna bug you with one more question then.
Sure.
Because this just led to one thing. Okay, back to playing Warlock, for example. Warlocks are not the easiest class to play in Arena, in Cataclysm. So what they're essentially doing is they're simplifying classes a lot, so all the average player can actually get bumped up to a little bit above average by just making the classes infrastructure a lot easier. They happen with the Frost Mages in Cataclysm, happening with Lux and Mist of Pandaria, and you guys saying that you're getting a feedback from this top amazing players, but let's say if you're gonna have a class, for example, that is too complicated for a newbie, but if the person is a skill player so amazing that he will be unstoppable, then how would you guys balance that? Would you balance it to make it more like a homogenic where there's not much of a skill difference in the class, or would you be fine if the average player and tell him, hey, you just need to learn, buddy?
I think I know it's a cliche, but the analogy we try to always point to is something more like really more like how it feels with chess, right? Like, I mean, I can sit down at a holiday party with a relative and play chess and enjoy myself, even though if I walked into an international chess tournament, they are going to mop the floor with me. That it doesn't make it inaccessible for me. Like, I understand enough of the rules to enjoy myself and to be able to use each one of the different pieces that's on the board. But the level of thought and strategy and play for those guys who are playing at that international tournament level is just so beyond. But it's really very rare that we're going to be in the same circles. Like, the truth is, I really have never been at a party with a Bobby Fischer. And more than likely, when I'm playing chess, I'm not going to make it to Bobby Fischer's table. With Forge setting up with sort of the dedicated server model, And then if we have matchmaking to actually place you somewhere, we'll certainly look at your rank as part of it. But with a dedicated server model, what you find with first-person shooters, where there's already a really large skill gap between the new player and the most experienced, they tend to kind of find a server they like that's around their skill level and play there. They don't go play someplace where they just mow through everybody, because that gets boring. And they don't go play someplace where they get stomped all the time, because that's frustrating. So you tend to find that each server sort of has its own little ecosystem of player skill. And we kind of see that fleshing out. All of that said, one thing that has definitely been a big part, even though these guys are very elite, they're the top of the top when it comes to PvP skill, they share the mindset of making sure that it's fun before it's at that level. Like, if it's not fun, it doesn't matter if it's the most competitive high-end experience out there, it's just not going to succeed. So we've definitely leaned more towards making it fun first, and making sure the depth exists for a player like them to expose it second. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you for your time too.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Not a problem.
Well, this is it, guys. This was the interview with the Timothy Alvis, the lead designer of Play Forge War game. I believe the actual name is Forge. And guys, you have no idea how he actually made me a very, very happy gamer. I mean, let's be honest. How many times when the lead developer will have us spend 40 minutes talking to a small YouTuber like myself? How many of the lead developers do that? Let me put it this way in perspective. How many actually lead developers talk to the audience, talk to their gamers, talk to and listening to what they have to say? And I was very, very pleased and surprised by our interview, and how much actual time Timothy gave me throughout his busy schedule. And I'm definitely looking forward to actually taking this game for a spin, playing this game out, making some good badass footages, or maybe make you guys laugh your asses off. But I definitely want to say one thing. I'm very excited about the game. I will buy it, I will try it out, and I would say it with the confidence that the level of interactivity between the game developers and the actual gamers who play their game is absolutely amazing in the game. I haven't seen it anywhere else yet. I haven't seen anywhere else, not even in WoW, or like maybe a little bit in the Rift, maybe a little bit in League of Legends, but I haven't seen like the full dedication where people would be like, you know what, we're gonna hire a few of you gamers to do a balancing for us, because we understand that you can stretch the system much better than we do. And you know what, if they're gonna keep up the level of interactivity with the community they have right now, I'm gonna say one thing, that this game can potentially be the best next thing happen to PvP gaming. Well, that's it guys for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Slap the like. Please go ahead and check out the Forge YouTube channel, and it's gonna be linked in the description below. Also check out their website, and you know what, you can actually come register for it. Do me a favor and register. Maybe they will introduce some sort of a Pikachu hat that I can actually wear on myself, and it will depend on how many people I'm gonna refer to the game. No, I'm just kidding, but honestly, go ahead and register and ask them, and guess what, you will get your questions answered. Beautiful. Very excited about the interactivity level of the game, very excited about the game overall in general. And thank you guys for watching this video, and до свидания.